What we're looking to do is just to have an honest, candid conversation with you, because the organisation that you're a part of, the organisation that you make, is about to go through, quite a challenging period. There's no two ways about that. And I think it's quite important that we're absolutely candid with you about how we see the world, our direction of travel, and as best we can, how we think that may or may not impact on you, your jobs, your lives. So not necessarily here this afternoon to try to create a fan club. We're here this afternoon to be straight and say, do you know what, this is the way that things look around here, and this is the way that we're thinking about it. So, by way of a start of a 10, I thought I might just drift for a few moments through the organisation that you're a part of. First and foremost, I would encourage you to use that thing that you have called a neck and look left and right, behind you if you like, and actually genuinely get a sense of the organisation that you're a part of, because it is not that often, is it, that we get together in groups beyond our own team. When I describe the council to the myriad of groups that I meet with, to children that I talk to in schools, it is an interesting organisation. We're into around 600 plus different services every single day of every single week. 4,000 colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, you have 4,000. Even if we are successful today in getting 12 to 1,300 of those colleagues here, that's still a lot that aren't here. We're a very big piece of business. We get through about £200 million a year. That's some significant spend. We're almost certainly the largest operational unit of business in Monmouthshire. That's what you're a part of. And I don't think perhaps we spend enough of our time just reminding ourselves what we are, who we are, and what binds us together. I'd like to think that what binds us together is service. You're all public servants. You've come to it through different routes. But to be part of our organisation, what we're striving for is some real vocation, a real sense of purpose. And I'd like to think that when I remind you that we're an organisation that is striving, absolutely striving, to make a contribution to build sustainable, resilient communities, that won't necessarily come as a surprise to you. But it might, But that's what we are. That's who we are. Peter said that he's proud, he's passionate about Monmouthshire. That's absolutely true. I get that sense from every single elected member that I come into contact with. But I get it from you guys as well. A large proportion of our workforce, you live here or you live close. So, you work for the council, your children benefit from our services, your mums, your dads, your family. In some way, shape or form, we have a plural contribution, or we take a plural contribution from our work. And that sort of general sense, I think, is really quite important for some of the things that I'm about to go through with you. Because I said candid, so let's start being candid. Peter mentioned money, didn't he? Now, you're all bright people. You follow the media, so you know that public sector, or the funding of public sector in Wales, it's crunch point. It's tight. In rough terms, over the course of the next 3 years, we've got to take down £27 million of cost from our organisation, or generate £27 million of income, or some combination of those numbers. Roughly, we get through, in revenue terms, about £150 million a year. Do the math. It's not A-level standard, is it, to realise that that's a hell of a challenge. £27 million we have to think about, and we've got some choices about how we do that. As an organisation, over the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years, we've only had 3 priorities, 3 real meaningful priorities. We've had a priority about children doing well in our schools. And it is pleasing, isn't it, having taken the knock that we took in 2012 with the Eston inspection of education in Monmouthshire. We've moved light years in that period. I was delighted to see in the summer just past that certainly at sort of GCSE level, we're now leading our nation. We've come through the pack, and we are making a difference for young people. They are leaving our schools with a pocket full of possibilities, and that's exactly what we should all want, because we all touch our education service in some way, shape or form. Caring for those that need our care is our second priority, the vulnerable. It's a difficult thing to actually sometimes break down, but that's what we do. That matters to us. That's called public service. And our third priority has been about enterprise. It's been about fueling job creation, creating opportunities, but also about being an enterprising organisation. How can you possibly dare to ask the commercial or the private sector to take that additional apprentice if you can't just hold up a mirror to yourself and say, do you know what, we're trying as well? They've been our three priorities. But whether that's enough, I think, is questionable as we go forward. And certainly I've asked the leader or suggested to the leader and cabinet colleagues that they might want to be thinking about a fourth priority going forward. And that fourth priority is about the importance of local service in our county towns. Because I know from talking to many of you that you struggle to locate what you do within those three priorities. If I'm not in a school, if I'm not working for social care, if I'm not in the business arm of our organisation, it's just too hard for me to find our place. And that can't be right, because Monmouthshire as a council will retain ambition going forward. I've given you the numbers, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But there is still an ambition here to do better things, to really improve what we're about. And I gave some comments this morning, which I'll replay now. We improved just over 2/3 of our service areas last year. PIs aren't everybody's cup of tea, but they are one thing that I tend to look at. Over 2/3 of those went up last year, which in the circumstances that we find ourselves is a pretty amazing effort, actually. At this point of this year, over 3/4 of the performance indicators that we judge to be important are moving positively in the right direction. Improvement on improvement. It is possible to improve in challenged times, and you are doing it. And you are doing it recurrently. And that doesn't go unnoticed. So what does £27 million mean? If I was sat in your seats, I'd be thinking, what about my job? What about my terms and conditions? Cut the fluff, get to where the action's at. Well, let's cut the fluff and get to where the action's at, shall we? There are councils in Wales who are currently thinking about terminating the contracts of everybody that works in their organisation, changing terms and conditions. I see all the heads come up now. We've got your attention. We're not one of those. We're not going to take that approach, certainly not in my time here. We will be an organisation that will be getting smaller over the next 2 to 3 years. Let's be straight about that. We've got about 4,000 people working with us right now. Rough guess, I suggest we're probably going to be 150 to 200 smaller than that over the course of the next 24 months. But we are not, repeat, not going to fundamentally attack the terms and conditions that underpin your employment. It was a reasonably short period of time ago that we went through a very extensive exercise around single status, equal pay, an exercise that some people in this room will have benefited from, others wouldn't. But it did bring a certain sense of fairness and equity about the way that we reward people in Monmouthshire. We're not going to jeopardise that. So you don't have to be worrying about that sort of conversation when you see it emerging in other places. The politicians here understand that if we were to start thinking about taking that approach, how can they possibly ask you to think about what really can be achieved? How can they possibly ask you to give as much as you're giving now, let alone more? And that's really the conversation that we're having this afternoon. So absolute numbers, almost certainly going to reduce. Fact. But with a 4,000 workforce, we have the ability to manage that and to manage it sensitively. So we're not going to be looking at sort of mass redundancies or anything of that nature, but there will be change. Change that will be so significant that I will go as far as to say that almost everything will change. Our attachment to buildings and things of that nature, we are going to have to rethink. What matters here is the service that we provide, not necessarily the buildings that we provide service out of. Now, I know that's going to be quite difficult for some, but that's, I think, going to be the way it's going to be. The members are absolutely committed to maintaining a good quality of local service. If we were running a big city, we might be able to take a different approach. If we were working in Cardiff or Shanghai or London, go wherever you may, You can cut multiple sort of units of things and people can still travel and access service. Well, it's a bit trickier to get from Monmouth to Caldicot, Chepstow to Gilwern. That's just not our county, is it? So if we're going to hold a good quality of local service, we are going to have to change a lot of things to make that happen. And some of those things are starting to appear in the council's budget strategy for next year. So again, let's not shy away from them. We are looking at co-locations. We are looking at changes. That is not hidden material, that's in the public domain. If you're not aware of that, then we need to work out why and make sure that you are. So as I say, not fan clubs this afternoon, the hard realities of what we're about. But there is no reason to think that we can't do well. I've given you a sense of the service improvement that we're seeing all the time. Look around you. What you will see is colleagues that have been with Monmouthshire for a while on the whole. People that tend to join us don't tend to go very far. And it's certainly not because we pay the most generous wages. You'll know that's not the case. It's certainly not because it's an easy life here. You'll know that's not the case. So for some reason, people seem to stay. And that's absolutely fantastic. And I think that's got something to do with being a part of an organisation that does try to achieve things. So Peter used the phrase innovation. That's interpreted in so many different ways by so many different people. Innovation's not about the next £1 million that you can find. It can be the smile that you leave on somebody's face. It can be the 5 that you find this week that you can repeat next week. It can be the change of a system that saves you an hour. Innovation is about continually thinking about the way that you perform your work, because nobody knows your work like you do. And everything that we can do to improve what we do matters. So, we're not going to be running up the flags for whoever saves the most or comes up with the weirdest idea. That's not what we're about. We're about continually looking for improvement and recognizing when people do a great job. We also recognize that people make mistakes. Nobody in this room will make as many mistakes as I do every single day. You just won't. But that's okay, as long as you're trying to achieve something. If you're fighting to improve your service, you will find a very receptive environment in this council, or I'd like to think that's the case. This afternoon isn't about just listening to me, listening to Peter, listening to others. There's no such thing as a free cup of tea, you know that. You're going to work in a bit, and we're going to ask you some questions about how you feel about your organisation. When we asked these questions earlier, I will say to you about your 600 plus colleagues, they were absolutely brutally honest, fearless. And I'm hoping you're going to be exactly the same. Tell us what you feel. Tell us what you think. Because we're going to be asking you about what's good about being here, what's not so good. We're going to be asking you about whether you feel the values of this organisation. Do teamwork, openness, fairness, flexibility, do they mean anything to you? Are they just words on a piece of paper? We're going to be asking you about whether you attach to purpose and how we can do more. We're also going to be giving you the opportunity to ask some direct, blunt, straight questions to the Chief Officer Leadership team here. It's still scary when we stand up, there are so many people that say, didn't know you, never seen you before. How can you try to be a networked organisation if that's the case? So let me summarise the candidness. Money's gone. It's not going, it's gone. We're going to change. We'll be smaller. Everything is going to change because of that. And we are changing things because we want to hold local service. Just because you can attach to one of our priorities at the moment, and we've got some school head teachers in the room by way of example, that doesn't mean more money's coming your way. It means you've got to be as effective as the rest of the organisation. We have to balance efficiency and effectiveness. Everybody needs to do their bit. That gives us the best chance of keeping everybody with us. We live in a unique part of Wales. You serve unique communities. There are people out there that want to help. They're able to help. They will make a difference with us. I think, John, the events that you talked about by way of introduction, we wouldn't have done these sorts of events a little while ago. We wouldn't have had, I think, it's closer to 9,000, I think, for those fireworks, wasn't it? But I think health and safety was 8,000, so we'll say 8. But there are a lot of people here enjoying themselves, having a good time, but actually they were also being a community. They were out together. They were doing things together. And we've got hundreds of them that have said to us on the night, we want to help. We want to join in. So it's not just a fireworks display, is it? It's much more than that. It's about helping people to attach to their community and to their space. And that's one of the things that I think still keeps our area special. Towns, villages, hamlets. People know where they live. They know where they're from, and they care about it. And I think you do as well. So, a lot of change coming our way. An organisation that will become smaller. I think we can manage that retreat. I think we'll certainly be trying to. I don't want you to be worrying about terms and conditions. That's not on the agenda today, tomorrow, or indeed in the medium term. And as Peter said, this thing about local government reorganisation, he introduced it, so I can talk to it. If you hadn't, I probably couldn't. But I will. Our politicians have staked their colours to the mast. They've said no. You know, I could dress it up, but they've said no. They've said not for us. So if we're going to be taken to a collaborative state, it will be by legislation, not by volunteering. And that means 2020. That's an Olympics and a half away. That's how far that is. Now, we won't still be here in 2020 unless we actually get on a different sort of pace and look very fundamentally at what we're doing. So if you want to think about LGR or whatever you want to call it, please carry on. But it's taking none of my time at the moment. It's not where my thinking is. And I'll come to it in a little while when I've got nothing better to do. But that isn't going to be in the short term. So for the rest of the afternoon, again, I'll end in the way that I started. We are genuinely ever so grateful to you for taking the time to come. We're actually genuinely grateful for you for what you do every single day. But there are some tasks. There are some voices that we're looking for. I want to hear what this organisation's got to say for itself. I want to hear what you're worried about. I want to hear your anxieties. I want to hear your opportunities. And we want to start thinking about how we connect, perhaps even more than we have done to this point in time. And I think that'll do for now. So on that point, John, Abby, I'll hand back to you.